Welcome to Purpose for Life podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Roberts, author of It's Deeper Than That and founder of The Great Reconnection. I am thrilled to have here with us today Kay Wilson. Thank you, Kay, so much for being with us today.
I am so happy to be here. It is such a blessing. Thank you so much.
I got introduced to Kay, gosh, it must be 11 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And since I got introduced to Kay, I've gotten to witness you evolve over time into where you are now and how you're offering yourself in the world and to yourself. So, would you share a little bit about how you offer yourself to yourself and how you offer yourself in the world?
I think how I offer myself to myself, I have grown and have been blessed since we have met. I believe it was 11 years ago. I certainly have evolved, and I think giving myself grace in every step, whether that's a step where, I'm always learning about myself, learning about others. And I've always been deep in reflection of myself. So I think how I show up, I would like to think for me is with grace
Mm.
and acceptance. It took me a while to understand. I had people that used to tell me, oh, things like, if the first half of your life is hard, then the next half of your life is going to be amazing, right? And so I'm like, okay, am I going to live to be 100? Like, which half am I on? Sometimes I don't know, but I think how I show up is really using my experience, my enthusiasm, the places that I've walked, the places that I've seen to be a light to other people. That's really what I try to do every day, understanding that, the light I share today may not be as dim as what I have tomorrow, but always just trying to be that light, and understanding that experiences that I go through aren't always my own, but sometimes I go through them hopefully to help someone else. So that's also how I try to show up for others.
That's really beautiful. Would you talk about how you view experiencing life as everything being either, no matter how hard it is, either an opportunity or a lesson or no experience? What you said, no experience is without, I'm going to say value. I don't think that was your
Yeah.
word, but would you talk about that?
Something that I read in your book, which was again phenomenal. I mean, no one has the place to judge your value or your worth, right? So for me, it all comes with lessons. You know this story because you had an opportunity to meet and I believe talk to briefly my dad. But, I was addicted to drugs when I was little. I was taken to the hospital by my grandmother. And when they found out that I had heroin in my system, they wouldn't let me go home to my family. And so, on one hand, people would say, oh, well, that started off terrible. Well, luckily for me at Children's Hospital, there was a woman who was a foster parent and decided that she was going to take me home. And so I lived with that family and was later adopted by that family. And again, I didn't have any say in how that was going to happen. I was 6 months old, but it was a lesson. It was a lesson. And so as I look through other areas in my life, some would consider, trauma. I don't call them traumas. I really just call them trials, right? So we
Mm,
all have to go through trials. And saying that I walk in every day is that, people will say, well, this happened for a season, or there was a season for that. And I believe that things happen for a reason, they happen for a season, but then there's also treason, which is necessary, and cohesion, which brings us all back together. And whichever part of the eason that you happen to be on, I believe that we eventually come together for cohesion, for the greater good. Now, whether that's, my greater good or someone that I encounter, their greater good, but we have to be able to give ourselves grace and be soft in how we look in the situation, even the hardest situations. There's always a soft part to that, and come together in cohesion for everybody's greater good. So I just try my best to walk in that and remind myself of that.
Will you say what treason to cohesion means to you?
Whatever anyone believes, we're all familiar with a lot of stories, a lot of different faiths. And, when I think of Easter, for example, right? So people will say the celebration of Easter's the celebration of, Jesus and the resurrection. And I would always say, well, to me, Easter is also the story of Judas, right? And why it was necessary. So even though there is a story there, right? If one part of that story was missing, all of it could have unraveled. No one's destiny would have been reached. And so treason to me sometimes is some people will think, and it's happened to me several times, where there is a treason in a relationship, right? A betrayal in a relationship. But I think most importantly, as we live life, we betray ourselves all the time. You opened up and you asked me a question about, how do I show up for myself? And sometimes when you don't give yourself space or self care or centering or just take in to enjoy a moment, understanding that moment is going to work out for your greater good, we're betraying ourselves. And so sometimes with that betrayal, we have to reconcile with that before we can move to the next step, right? To that cohesion. And so if you're constantly, moving your boundaries, if you're constantly
Mm,
pouring from an empty cup, right? There is no cohesion because there's nothing there, right? You have
mm.
no more to give. And so sometimes you have to reconcile with that betrayal, whatever that is, before you can move on to the cohesion, because cohesion means you come together, right? Well, if there's nothing there, if you're giving yourself nothing, you're certainly not going to be able to give to other people. So there is no cohesion there until you actually reconcile with whatever that betrayal is.
So let me say this back to you and tell me if I'm understanding. If there's an external betrayal, we may or may not do an internal betrayal. But if we have done an internal betrayal to face an outer betrayal, then until we reckon with the cost to our own self, we can't come together inside of our own selves for cohesion. Am I understanding?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And I really appreciate what you're saying because I think sometimes people, I call it a spiritual bypass, they want to jump over this part of what we have to reckon with inside of ourselves. And
Mhm.
you're saying stay with yourself until you find your true wholeness and holiness. Don't pretend you're whole and holy.
Absolutely, because you can't even, it's sometimes it's a default, right? Like we live and walk in a space, most particularly not to call anything out from federal places on high, but people who want to point fingers, right, outward, and you still have to reconcile with yourself, right? Someone can't take something from me if I don't know what all of me looks like. I certainly can't accuse someone from taking it from me because
Wow.
I can't even identify it. So I can't point a finger and say, well, you took from me. And I don't even know what all of me looks like. I need to know what all of me looks like in order to even
Wow.
identify.
That is really powerful. You were talking before we got on about quilts, but it's almost like making sure your own quilt is quilted, that you've put, what pieces of your quilt are. I often say when I'm teaching that our life is like a tapestry. And we are where we are in the imagery of that tapestry. It's like we want to get rid of what we've already experienced, but we've already experienced it. And we can't get rid of it. We can change how we think about ourselves within it, which is what I think you're saying. How are
Hmm.
you being true to yourself? How are you seeing yourself? And how are you seeing all of you? So you can determine then how you do or do not share yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And listening to you, it sounds like you didn't say this directly, but somehow you want to make sure that your cup is full.
Yeah. I think it's really important because, no one can pour from an empty cup. And, people ask me all the time, is the glass full or is the glass empty? Well, to me, it's always full. And now, whether it's full of water or air or whatever liquid or air,
Interesting.
but to me, it's always full. There's something always there. Recognizing, some people might say that, well, my cup is empty, but what is your capacity, right? My full cup may not look like someone else's, right? And I think that's also
Mm,
where we do that evaluation. I'm expecting this person to love me or do for me at this capacity, and that's not even their capacity. My
mm,
capacity looks like a teacup, as an example, and this person's capacity looks more like a thimble, right? In that area.
mm,
Now, there may be something else where their capacity happens to be larger than mine, but again, I have to evaluate myself first and say, okay, well, what does my cup look like? And understanding that, I need my cup to be full,
full
running
of
over,
what?
because
Full of what?
my initial reaction to that would be I would love for my cup always to be full of joy. But I would say I want my cup to be full of freedom, because I wake up today and my cup may look like, I laugh because we're going into the new year and you're looking at clutter. And, I can't tell you how many, I don't have coffee cups or teacups. I have one of like, it seems like a million, right? Like I don't have a set. And so each day I may look different, but I want the freedom to be able to say what my cup looks like today. But for me, again, my cup is always going to be full. Always, always. As long as I have the opportunity to be seen and not viewed, my cup
Mm.
will always be full.
Will you say that again? To be seen and not to not be viewed.
Yes,
That
as
is
long as I
deep.
have the capacity to be seen and not viewed, then my cup will always be full.
I got to sit with that one for a minute, listeners. I bet you're sitting with that one too. That was like a wisdom gem just dropped here to chew on for a bit. I'm also, so stimulated here, like thinking about, well, our cups are always full, but what it could be full of emptiness or full of
Mhm.
negativity or full of self-hatred or full. It's not that it's actually ever really empty.
Right.
It's filled with something. And the question is
Hmm.
and love that you said freedom. And will you talk about the difference between being seen and being viewed?
I think, there are older people in my family that used to say that, right? So if I'm being viewed, right, then that means people are reading my obituary and all the things, right? I would rather be seen. I want to be seen. I want to be present in the moment to where I have the capacities. And I say capacity because, tomorrow I may not have the same capacity, but where I have the capacities to scrap yesterday and do today, right? Yesterday's behind me. I need to do today, whatever that means. And so to me, that's the difference. If I'm being viewed, then everything I've done between those dashes from when I was born to when I'm no longer here, that's kind of it. But as long as my dash is still moving, it's still there. that I'm being seen. And I'm going to fill that with just freedom.
Mm, thank you, Kay. Loving that. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. How do you offer what you do in the world?
I always try my best to show up for other people and be present. I offer what I have, whether it's, strategic wisdom, whether
Mm,
it's, you know, experience. I try to offer all of that freely again because it took me a while to understand the hard times, and I've had quite a few, but they were all necessary. And the people that I've met along the way, prayerfully, again, it was not done for them. It was never done in spite of them, but it was done because of them. And again, because we're all connected. I believe we're all connected. And so if I can share freely advice, encouragement, inspiration, upliftment, just my own personal experience. I'm going to do it with enthusiasm. I'm going to do it with passion. The same passion that probably brought me to my knees is the same amount of passion that I'm going to share when I'm bringing it to other people. And so I think I try to show up authentically as much as I can and, you know, offer as much as I have because I want to leave this place empty. That's the only time you will hear me say that my cup is empty when I leave this place. I want it to be fully spent and empty.
I love that. I'm listening to the power, and this is my language, hard experiences being alchemized through treason to cohesion to become fruitful and liberating.
Yeah,
Somehow
yeah, for sure.
you understand that journey within you. And I think to have that kind of understanding at that kind of level is powerful for other people to be in connection with you around. It will transform them with or without language.
That is my hope.
Well, I believe it is so, listening to you. We talked earlier about how you see quilts and how you see the metaphor of quilts. And would you talk about that?
So, being a Black woman raised in a white house, I have known or I have felt the absence of belonging in different spaces. And what I came to realize again, I can have challenges, uh, but I believe, in life there are no mistakes. Sometimes you don't know that till you get on the other side, right? Um, it was all for a lesson. And so when I talk about quilts, quilts are, sometimes scraps of fabric. So when my youngest was small, I took some of his brother's baby clothes and some of his baby clothes, along with some African fabric that I had different things made out of. And I started to sew together a quilt. Sometimes they have beautiful pattern. Maybe the quilt's different pieces can be sewn together to make a picture. But when sewn together, it's can just be breathtaking. And so, because I didn't want to get rid of my children's clothes, I just decided to quilt it together. And when I think about whether myself and growing up or life experiences that I've had, navigating with a lot of diverse audiences, people, friends, together, we all make this quilt. And so I love that everyone brings their own unique shape, threading, but when we're together, it's just incredible. And I just love that. So I think that's why I said quilts. I know you mentioned tapestry as well. I just think they're all unique. They all served a purpose, right? Some people always, oh, my purpose is over. Well, my kids outgrew those clothes, but the purpose still lives on because now
Mm,
they're in a quilt. And that's what I think, even with us, with you, with the work that you're doing, you have evidence of phenomenal books, work that you have, people that you've touched, this podcast going across 31 countries. Like that's something that's going to live on. Those words will live on far past you, right? And so
mm,
I think that's beautiful and will make a quilt.
mm.
And someone may take something that they heard from you several years from now and bring it into their life. And again, it will be repurposed somehow and still be just as beautiful.
That is deep. You keep dropping these wisdom gems here, Cake, because you've outgrown something doesn't mean that it doesn't have purpose.
Mm,
That is
mm.
deep. It's really, really deep. And that I don't believe as we're um, being together that we will ever really understand a ripple effect or what gets carried on or how it gets carried on or if a seed's been planted or we don't know. We don't, but we're so much more than what we think we are. And we limit our thinking around things. And every time you talk, I just keep feeling like whatever constraints people have, or you just kind of keep the constructs
Well,
that don't need to be there. There's a liberation in what you're saying.
I mean, and we're all connected. It's funny the things that you think or read about, right, at different times or seasons. And so probably 2 years ago, I started reading about mushrooms. So unfortunately, I cannot do coffee. I don't know what I did in prior life that coffee and chocolate are a no-no for me. They give me migraines. And so I started reading about mushrooms and different mushroom teas and things of that nature. And knowing work that I even did in West Africa, that there are mushrooms underneath all of the earth. There are highways and byways of mushrooms that are connecting and speaking languages in different parts of the globe and give different things, different offerings, but they're all connected underneath. And I just think that, we're all connected. We're different beings and we pop up in different places and we may have sprouted in different places, but all the same have value. And if you get rid of one or somebody comes along and cuts the grass and there was a mushroom there and you no longer see the cap of the mushroom underneath, every other mushroom feels that. And I just think that, again, we all have purpose and that light may shine a little brighter, for someone over here at this time, but then far on the other side of the globe, there's someone else and it's their time and they're shining. But everybody's going to have light. Everyone's has the opportunity to be a light and have light, but we all just have that connection. And so we all have a purpose. And your point about ripple effect, we have no idea, right? Like, have no idea how something that you have said, I take it in, but 4 months from now, how that is actually going to reverberate in my spirit and just all
Hmm.
of a sudden I'm going to recall. And the amazing thing that I heard you say 4 months ago now has a deeper effect on me
Yeah.
than it did in this moment because I didn't need it as much as I will need it 4 months from now.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have to begin to wind down. I always ask my guests this question: what do you think the purpose for life is?
Oh, wow. And this is a wind down question, Susan?
It is. Wind down, wind
Okay.
up, wind through.
Um, I think the purpose, I think life wants to be lived, right? I think life just wants to be lived. the fact that you living it to the fullest is going to have so much effect on those that come after you. Whether you have children, whether you just have people that, are in your circle or your space that you care for, they're all watching how you live it.
Mm,
And if you're not being open, if you're not taking risks, if you're not understanding the value that you bring with every step that you take, then you have to know that the people that come after you are also going to be timid.
mm.
And it will also take them longer to wake up. It will also take them longer to understand their own value or worth. And so I think the purpose of life is to just live every day, live it, because it's not promised. It's
That's
not
right. That
promised.
is right. That is right. Thank you. If people want to get a hold of you or work with you in any kind of way, how would people find you?
So I do have a website at wkayleads.com, or they could DM me on Instagram at WKAYleads.
Great.
And on Facebook, it's just WKAY Wilson.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here today. I feel like I'm going to absorb this and be changed having listened to you today. Thank you so much. I know our listeners are going to be really moved listening to you here today. So, thank you all for being with us here today. Once again, it's the Purpose for Life podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Roberts. Subscribe, share it with your friends. Let's spread positivity and goodness into the world through these amazing human beings. And Kay Wilson here today. Thank you so much.